When did you realize your family had been lying for years?
I always thought my family was ordinary. Messy, complicated, but ordinary. I grew up believing in Sunday dinners at my grandmother's house, in stories my dad told about how he met my mom, in the photo albums lined up neatly in the living room. I thought I knew who we were, but everything I believed about us began to unravel the night I found a box hidden in the attic. It was late, sometime after midnight. I couldn't sleep because of the storm rattling the windows. My parents were downstairs fighting again, voices low and sharp like knives scraping against each other. I slipped out of bed, crept into the attic with a flashlight, and started rummaging through old boxes just to distract myself. That's when I saw it. A small wooden chest shoved behind Christmas decorations and old suitcases. No label, just a padlock that had long since rested away. My hands were shaking when I pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside were letters, dozens of them, bound with twine. The handwriting was neat but not familiar. I expected to see my father's name, maybe something romantic from my mother's younger days, but the envelopes were addressed to her, all signed the same way at the bottom, forever, M. I froze. My father's name doesn't start with M. I pulled one out, unfolded it carefully. The words swam in front of me, but one line burned into my brain. I can't stand living in the shadows anymore. I want the world to know you're mine. The sound of footsteps creaking up the stairs made my heart pound. I shoved the letter back, closed the box, and slid it under a blanket. The attic door creaked open. "Jake?" my mom's voice whispered. She peeked in holding a candle because the storm had knocked the power out. Her eyes locked on me. "What are you doing up here?" "Couldn't sleep," I said quickly, forcing my face into innocence. "The storm's too loud." She studied me for a moment, too long, like she was searching for evidence. Then she sighed, nodded, and told me to come back downstairs. I didn't dare mention the box. Not then. But that night planted a splinter in my mind. The next day, I returned to the attic while my parents were out. I pulled the letters out one by one, reading until my chest hurt. They spanned years. Before I was born, after I was born, some of them written just last year. He suspects nothing. When we're finally free, we'll start over. Does he know Jake isn't really his? That last one nearly made me vomit. I stumbled back, dropping the letter. My hands went cold, my body shaking in silence, while the words echoed in my head. Does he know Jake isn't really his? My father. The man who raised me, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who sat with me during every math test breakdown, who worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. Was he not even my father? The letters blurred through my tears. My mom had been hiding something colossal for years. I stuffed the box back where I'd found it. But it didn't matter. The truth had already clawed its way into me. That night, I watched my parents like a stranger in my own house. My mom laughed too brightly at the dinner table, brushing her hair behind her ear like nothing was wrong. My dad asked me about school, the same way he always did, completely unaware his whole world might be a lie. I couldn't eat. I excused myself early, claiming homework. Upstairs, I sat on my bed with my fists clenched, staring at the family photos on my dresser. My parents' wedding picture, me as a baby in my dad's arms. I couldn't stop wondering whose blood ran in my veins. The storm had passed, but inside me, something darker was just beginning. I knew I had to confront her, but not yet. I needed proof, solid proof. The following weekend, while my parents thought I was at a friend's house, I went digging again. This time, I checked the very bottom of the chest. Beneath the letters was an envelope marked with my name. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a birth certificate. Not the one I'd seen before. This one listed a different father. The name began with M. I dropped to my knees, the air gone from my lungs. It was undeniable now. My entire identity had been built on a lie. And the worst part? Someone in this house had been willing to bury it forever. The front door slammed downstairs. My mom's voice floated up. Jake, are you home? I shoved the certificate into my jacket pocket, heart racing. Because now, I wasn't just holding a secret. I was holding a weapon. And I wasn't sure who I'd end up using it against. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the certificate hidden beneath my pillow like a loaded gun. Every sound in the house made me flinch. The hum of the refrigerator, the pipes creaking, my father snoring through the wall. I kept replaying everything in my head. The way mom would disappear on errands for hours when I was a kid. The hushed phone calls in the laundry room, her voice soft and careful. The way she'd sometimes look at me with an expression I couldn't place. Was it guilt? Pity? By sunrise, I knew I couldn't
Free
pretend
to use.
anymore. But
Gameplay for
confronting
your
her meant
TikToks. Just
detonating a
download
bomb that
the
might
video.
never stop burning. At breakfast, my father was cheerful, sipping coffee and reading the paper. He asked me about my math test. I answered automatically, but my eyes kept sliding to my mother. She moved around the kitchen like nothing was wrong, humming under her breath. When our eyes met, I swear hers lingered a beat too long. Like she knew, I knew. After school, I cornered her in the kitchen while Dad was outside mowing the lawn. My hands were sweating as I pulled the folded certificate from my pocket and placed it on the table. Her face went pale. She didn't even try to pretend. "Where did you find this?" she whispered. "In the attic," I said, my voice cracking. "Along with all the letters." "Who is he? Who's M?" She sat down hard in a chair, covering her mouth with her hands. Her shoulders shook. For a terrifying moment, I thought she might lie again. But then she whispered, "He's your real father." The words ripped through me like a blade. "So, Dad," I couldn't barely say it. "He's not my father?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "He is your father in every way that matters. He raised you. He loves you. He doesn't know." The room tilted around me. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "So you've been lying to both of us my entire life?" "I was protecting you," she said quickly. "Protecting all of us. If your father ever found out," she cut herself off, shaking her head, "it would destroy him." I stared at her, disgust rising in my throat. "And what about me? What about destroying me?" Her face crumpled. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Before she could say more, the back door creaked open. Dad stepped inside, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What are you two whispering about?" My heart slammed against my ribs. I shoved the certificate back in my pocket before he could see. "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just school stuff." Mom gave me a look, pleading, terrified. I knew in that moment she'd do anything to keep the secret buried. But secrets have a way of clawing themselves into the light. That night, I lay awake listening to the muffled sound of my parents' voices in their bedroom. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught enough. "Mom, he's been acting strange. I think he knows." "Dad, knows what?" Silence. My blood turned to ice. She hadn't told him, not in all these years. I thought about running away, about packing a bag and leaving this house full of lies behind. But where would I go? And besides, a part of me wanted the truth. All of it. The next day, I skipped school. Instead, I went back to the attic and searched for anything else that might explain who this M really was. And that's when I found the photograph. It was tucked inside a yellowed envelope at the bottom of the chest. A man stood with his arm around my mother, younger but unmistakable. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that looked almost identical to mine. I dropped the photo like it had burned me. I wasn't imagining things. This man wasn't just some lover. He was blood. He was me. The door creaked behind me, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Dad stood there, his brow furrowed. "Jake, what are you doing up here?" Panic shot through me. The box, the letters, the photo still on the floor. I tried to kick the envelope under a blanket, but he saw the movement. His eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, reaching down before I could stop him. He picked up the photo, stared at it, and his whole face changed. "Why do you have this?" His voice was low, dangerous. I I just found it." His hands trembled as he looked between the photo and me. His eyes lingered on my face, scanning, searching. I knew then. He saw it too. The resemblance. He didn't say another word. He just walked out of the attic, the photo clenched in his fist, leaving me shaking in the dark. Downstairs, a door slammed. Then silence. That silence was worse than any yelling, because it meant the secret wasn't hidden anymore. It had just exploded.
The silence stretched for hours. I stayed upstairs, pacing my room, ears straining for any sound. But the house felt hollow. No footsteps, no TV humming in the background, no clinking dishes from the kitchen, just the faint hum of the refrigerator, steady as a heartbeat. When I finally crept down the stairs, the first thing I saw was my mom at the kitchen table. Her hands were clasped together like she was praying, but her eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. The photograph sat in front of her. My father wasn't there. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice breaking. She flinched at the sound of my voice, like she'd forgotten I existed. Then she whispered, "He left." "Left where?" "I don't know." Her words cracked in the middle, and I realized she was shaking all over. For a moment, neither of us moved. The photo lay between us like a weapon. His face, my face, if I was being honest, looked back at us, frozen in time. Finally, I couldn't stand it. "So he knows." Tears slid down her cheeks. I never wanted him to find out like this. Like this? I almost laughed. It came out sharp and bitter. "Mom, you've been lying to him for nearly 2 decades. There was never going to be a good way." Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue. The front door opened then, and my father stepped inside. His face was pale, his jaw tight. His eyes were bloodshot, like he'd been crying, or drinking, or both. He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know if he saw his son. He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know if he saw his son. "I want answers," he said, his voice low and shaking with barely controlled rage. He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at her. Mom's face crumpled. She reached for him, but he stepped back. "Who is he?" Dad demanded. "Who the hell is this man?" He jabbed a finger at the photo on the table. Her mouth opened, closed. For a second, I thought she might lie again. But then she whispered, "Michael." The name hit me like a fist. My father's face went slack. His hand trembled as it gripped the back of a chair. "Michael, your sister's husband?" The air was sucked from the room. I froze. My stomach lurched. My mother couldn't even look at me. "Yes," she whispered. "It was years ago, before Jake was born. I thought it was over." Dad staggered back a step, like her words had physically hit him. His voice was a whisper now, raw and disbelieving. "My own brother?" The room spun. Uncle Michael, my uncle, the man who came to every barbecue, who tossed me footballs in the yard, who hugged me at Christmas and slipped me $20 bills when he thought no one was looking. He wasn't just my uncle. He might be my father. I couldn't breathe. Dad slammed his fist against the wall so hard a picture fell. All these years, I've been raising another man's son, my own brother's son. "Don't say that," Mom begged, sobbing now. "You are his father. You always will be." But the words sounded hollow. He turned his gaze on me, and I wished he hadn't. There was so much pain there, but something else too, something darker, resentment. "Did you know?" he asked me, his voice trembling. I shook my head furiously. "I found the letters, the certificate. I only found out days ago." His shoulders slumped, like the weight of the world had crashed down on him. He looked at me for a long moment, then turned away. "I can't be here right now." He grabbed his keys and stormed out, the door slamming so hard the frame rattled. I sat frozen, every nerve on fire. My mother collapsed into sobs, her face buried in her hands. But all I could think about was Michael, my uncle,
and the possibility that he wasn't just an uncle, that he was blood. The next time I saw Michael was 3 days later at my grandmother's house. Dad hadn't come home. Mom had been moving through the house like a ghost, barely speaking, barely eating. I'd been drowning in questions, in shame, in anger. So when Grandma called asking if I could stop by to help move some boxes from the garage, I went. I thought maybe the normalcy would help. But when I walked into her kitchen, Michael was already there, sitting at the table with a beer, laughing like the world wasn't crumbling around me. When he saw me, his smile faltered. "Jake, you look just like your mom at that age." The words made bile rise in my throat. He knew. I could see it in his eyes. My hands curled into fists at my sides. "Uncle Michael," I said, my voice low, shaking. "We need to talk."
The kitchen felt suddenly too small, the air too heavy. Michael shifted in his chair, setting the beer down on the table. His eyes flickered toward the hallway, probably checking if Grandma was close enough to hear. "Talk about what?" he asked, his voice steady but with a hint of caution. I pulled out the folded birth certificate from my jacket. My hands were shaking, but I tossed it onto the table in front of him, like a gauntlet. His jaw clenched. He didn't touch it, didn't even glance at it, just kept his eyes on me. "So it's true," I said. Michael exhaled slowly, like the weight of years was pressing down on him. "Your mom told you." I barked a bitter laugh. "No, I found out. Letters, pictures. This." I jobbed a paper between us. "She never planned to tell me. Neither did you." He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting away for the first time. "It wasn't supposed to turn out like this." "Turn out like what?" I snapped. "Like me existing? Like destroying my family? Like you and my mom pretending none of it happened?" He flinched, but he didn't argue. His silence said enough. "I need to know," I said, my voice cracking. "Are you my father?" The pause that followed felt like a lifetime. Finally, he whispered, "Yes." The word detonated in my chest. My fist tightened until my nails dug into my palms. I wanted to hit him, to scream, to do something to tear through the suffocating rage building inside me. Instead, I just whispered, "Why?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I saw regret there, maybe even shame. "It was a mistake. One night. We were drunk. She and your dad had been fighting. I didn't mean for it to happen. But once it did," he trailed off, staring at the table. "I loved her. I still do." My stomach turned. Hearing him say it out loud made me want to vomit. "You loved her so much, you let my dad raise me like his own? You loved her so much, you came to birthdays and Christmas dinners? And you just sat there smiling like everything was normal." His jaw tightened. "I stayed away as much as I could. For your sake, for everyone's. But your mom, she wanted to keep things the way they were. She thought it was best." "Best?" I choked out. "Best for who? For you? For her? Sure it wasn't best for me. Or for Dad." Before he could answer, Grandmom's footsteps echoed down the hallway. Michael straightened quickly, sliding the birth certificate under his arm like it was just some scrap paper. "Everything all right in here?" Grandma asked, her voice cheerful as she walked into the kitchen. "Fine," Michael said quickly, too quickly. I forced a smile, but my whole body was trembling. "Yeah, fine." She nodded, oblivious, and started fussing with the groceries on the counter. I couldn't stay in that room another second. "I'll get the boxes from the garage," I muttered, pushing away from the table. Michael's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. His grip was firm, almost desperate. His eyes bored into mine. "Don't tell him. Not yet." I yanked my arm free. The words burned in my chest, but I swallowed them because Grandma was watching. Later, after I helped move boxes and escaped the house, I walked home with my mind spinning. The truth was out now, and it was worse than I ever imagined. My father wasn't just betrayed. He was betrayed by his own brother. That night, Dad still hadn't come home. His phone went straight to voicemail when I tried calling him. Mom sat on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, not even reacting to the flashing images. I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, but the exhaustion hit me like a wave. Instead, I just collapsed into my room and shut the door. Hours later, I woke to shouting. I stumbled into the hallway, my heart hammering. The front door was open wide. Dad's voice thundered from outside, raw and furious. "You lied to me. You let me be a fool for 18 years. Then Michael's voice, low but sharp. I never wanted it this way, but she chose me. My stomach dropped. He was here. I ran to the porch just as my father swung at him. Michael staggered back, blood at the corner of his lip. Enough! Mom screamed, running between them. But neither of them heard her. Dad lunged again, his face twisted with rage. Michael caught his arm, shoved him back. I'd never seen two grown men like that, brothers, trying to tear each other apart. Neighbors' lights flicked on down the street. A dog barked. Somewhere, a curtain shifted as someone peeked out. I wanted to shout, to stop them, but my voice stuck in my throat. Because part of me wondered if maybe this fight was the only thing that could settle the years of lies. And part of me was terrified that it would end with blood. The sound of fists hitting flesh is something I'll never forget. It's not like in movies. It's raw, sickening, messy. My father's knuckles cracked against Michael's jaw with a wet thud, and Michael answered with a shove so hard, Dad stumbled into the flower bed. Mom was screaming. Her voice kept breaking, pleading with them to stop, but neither man seemed to hear her. Years of betrayal had boiled down to this moment. Two brothers tearing each other apart in the front yard while the neighborhood watched through curtains. Dad, I finally shouted, my voice breaking. Stop! He turned his head toward me just for a second, and in that moment, Michael's fist connected with his ribs. Dad crumpled to one knee, gasping for breath. Something in me snapped. I rushed forward, shoving myself between them before Michael could strike again. Enough, I yelled, my arms outstretched. This isn't fixing anything. For a second, everything froze. Michael's chest was heaving, blood dripping from his lip. My father was on one knee, rage still burning in his eyes, but dimmed now by exhaustion and pain. Mom stood a few feet away, tears streaming down her face, whispering prayers I couldn't hear. The night air was heavy, charged like the moment before a storm breaks. Finally, Michael stepped back. He wiped the blood from his mouth and spat into the grass. His eyes met mine, and there was something there, something almost pleading. This isn't your fight, Jake, he said, his voice low, ragged. You don't understand. Don't tell me what I don't understand. You lied to all of us. My throat tightened. You're supposed to be my uncle. And now you're telling me you're my father. You ruined everything. He flinched like I had hit him harder than my dad ever could. But before he could answer, Dad forced himself back to his feet. You're nothing to him, Dad spat, his voice shaking with fury. You're nothing to any of us. You hear me? Nothing. Michael's face twisted. Say that again. I raised him. I stayed. I sacrificed. You are too much of a coward to own up to your mistakes. You think you're a father? You don't even know what that word means. Michael's hands curled into fists again, but I grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at me. Go, I said. Just go. For a long moment, he stared at me, his jaw clenched, his eyes glassy. Then he pulled free, turned, and stalked down the street without another word. The three of us, Mom, Dad, and me, stood in the wreckage of what used to be a family. Neighbors' curtains snapped shut, the show over for the night. Finally, Dad turned to Mom. His face was pale, his voice flat. Pack a bag. You're leaving. She froze. What? You heard me, he growled. You've lied to me for the last time. Get your things and get out. Her sobs broke the silence, but he didn't flinch. He didn't even look at me. He just walked back into the house, shoulders rigid, jaw clenched. I watched my mother crumple in the yard, her body shaking as she cried. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her, because I didn't know who she was anymore. That night was chaos. Dad locked himself in the bedroom. Mom slept on the couch, her suitcase half packed at her side. I lay awake in my room, staring at the ceiling. My chest, hollow. By morning, Dad was gone, his side of the closet empty, his toothbrush missing from the bathroom. A note sat on the kitchen table. I need time. Don't call me. Mom read it, her hands trembling. Then she looked at me. We'll be okay, she whispered. I didn't believe her. The days that followed were unbearable. Whispers followed me at school. People had seen the fight, had heard rumors. My friends asked questions I didn't want to answer. I avoided them all. At home, the silence grew heavier. Mom tiptoed around me, cooking meals I didn't eat, trying to start conversations I ignored. Dad didn't come back. Then, one evening, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Michael stood there. His face was bruised, one eye swollen, but he was dressed neatly, like he'd been preparing for this moment. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I didn't move. Why? Because I need to explain, he said. His voice cracked. And because whether you want it or not, I'm your father, and I don't want to lose you. The words hit me like ice. Behind me, I heard Mom's voice from the kitchen. Jake, who is it? I didn't answer. Michael's eyes searched mine, desperate, pleading. And I realized this wasn't over. Not even close. Because the question now wasn't just about who had lied. It was about who I was willing to believe. I didn't answer him right away. I just stood in the doorway, staring at this man who had suddenly become something more than an uncle. My stomach twisted as Mom's footsteps creaked closer from the kitchen. When she saw Michael standing there, she froze, her face drained of color. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. Michael's eyes flicked to her, then back to me. I need to talk to him. Alone. The nerve of him, standing there like he had a right to demand anything. Still, part of me wanted him to come in, wanted to hear what he had to say. Mom must have seen that hesitation, because she moved quickly, stepping between us. No, you've caused enough damage. Go home, Michael. This is his home too, and he deserves to know the truth. All of it. My pulse raced. The truth. Those words had become poison in my veins. Then say it, I demanded, my voice trembling. Right here, right now. Tell me everything. Michael's jaw clenched. He stepped forward, his voice low, deliberate. I loved your mother before your father ever did. She chose him, but things happened. We made a mistake, yes, but it wasn't just some fling. It was real. And you, his eyes burned into mine. You're proof of that. Stop, Mom whispered. She reached for my arm, but I pulled away. I couldn't stop staring at Michael. My mind replayed every family barbecue, every Christmas where he smiled at me, every birthday card with money tucked inside. Had he always known? Had he looked at me and thought, that's my son? You knew, I said, my voice hollow. He hesitated, then nodded. Yes. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. And you never said anything? What would you have wanted me to say? That your life was a lie? That the man you called dad wasn't really your father? I thought I was sparing you. Sparing me? My voice rose, sharp, bitter. No, you were sparing yourself. You wanted to keep your dirty secret hidden. Michael's face hardened, and for a second, I saw the same stubbornness my dad carried when he was angry. I stayed quiet because I respected your father, because he loved you, and I couldn't take that away from him. Respect? Mom spat, her voice trembling with fury. You respected him by sleeping with his wife? By sneaking behind his back for years? Michael flinched, but he didn't back down. I loved you. The words hung in the air like a curse. My chest ached, my throat tight. I couldn't breathe in that room anymore. I turned and stormed out the back door, into the yard. The night air slapped me across the face, cool and sharp. Behind me, their voices collided in an explosion of accusations, regrets, and unfinished sentences. I barely heard them. My head was too full. I ended up at the park a few blocks away, sitting on the swings like I was 10 years old again. The chains creaked as I pushed myself gently, staring at the ground. My father? No, my dad hadn't come home in days. My mother was a stranger. And now the man I called uncle wanted to be something else entirely. I didn't even notice someone approach until I heard my name. It was Dad. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, but his eyes were sharp, locked on me. Jake. My throat closed up. Dad, he raised a hand. Don't. Don't call me that. Not until I figure out what the hell you are to me. The words cut deeper than anything Michael had said. I gripped the chains tighter. I didn't ask for this, he said, his voice breaking for the first time. I know. I know, son. And that's what makes this worse. None of this is your fault. But every time I look at you now, he trailed off, shaking his head. My eyes burned. So what? You're just going to walk away? I don't know what else to do, he whispered. Every time I see your face, I see him, my brother, the man who betrayed me and her. He sank down on the swing beside me, his body heavy with defeat. I love you. God help me. I love you, but I don't know if I can live with the lie anymore. I wanted to scream, to beg him not to leave, but the words wouldn't come. All I could do was sit there, the chains creaking between us, while my whole world crumbled piece by piece. When I finally looked up, I realized he was crying, silent, heavy tears that carved lines down his face. And in that moment, I knew nothing would ever go back to normal. Because even if the truth set you free, it could also destroy everything you thought you were. We sat there in silence for what felt like hours, the swings swaying gently beneath us. The park was empty, the streetlights casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. I wanted to reach for him, to close the distance that the truth had carved between us. But he wouldn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the ground, as if seeing me hurt too much. Finally, he stood. His voice was hoarse, raw. I need space, Jake. I don't know how to forgive her, and I don't know how to look at you without seeing him. Dad. The word slipped out before I could stop it. He froze, his shoulders stiff. For a moment, I thought he might turn back, but he didn't. He just walked away, disappearing into the dark. The swing creaked beneath me as I sat there alone, trying not to fall apart. When I finally made my way home, the house was eerily quiet. Mom was at the kitchen table, a glass of wine untouched in front of her. Her eyes were swollen, like she'd been crying for hours. Where were you? She asked softly. With him, I muttered. Her lips trembled. Is he coming back? I shook my head. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. She flinched like I'd slapped her. For a second, I felt a flicker of pity. Then I remembered the years of lies, the letters, the photo, the way she'd begged me to stay quiet. You ruined him, I said coldly. You ruined all of us. Her eyes filled again, but she didn't argue. She just lowered her head into her hands and wept. That night, as I lay awake, staring at the dark ceiling, my mind was buzzing. I kept seeing Michael's face, hearing his voice. You're proof of that. I wanted to believe it was a lie, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Days blurred after that. Dad didn't come home. Mom moved like a ghost through the house, barely eating, barely speaking. And Michael started showing up everywhere. He cornered me after school one afternoon, waiting by his truck at the edge of the parking lot. Jake, he said, stepping closer, please, just give me a chance to explain. I don't want to lose you. I crossed my arms. You never had me. His face tightened. That's not true. I was there. Maybe not the way I should have been, but I never stopped caring. I never stopped watching out for you. I almost laughed. Watching out for me? You mean watching me grow up while Dad did the hard work? You were too much of a coward to say anything. Don't act like you did me some favor. Something flickered in his eyes then. Anger, maybe. Or shame. He leaned in, his voice low. Your dad will never forgive your mother. You know that. And when he's gone, you'll need someone. I can be that person. I stepped back like his words had burned me. You'll never be my father. Never. I turned and walked away before he could say more, but his words clung to me like tar. That evening, when I got home, Dad's car was in the driveway. My chest surged with hope, but the moment I walked inside, I realized it wasn't good. He was in the living room, standing with his suitcase. Mom was sobbing, clutching his arm, begging him to stay. I can't, he said, his voice breaking. After everything. Please, she whispered. We can fix this. We can. There's no fixing this, he snapped. His eyes darted to me then, softening for a moment. I'll always love you, Jake, but I can't stay here. My throat closed up. Where will you go? He hesitated. I don't know, but not here. And just like that, he was gone. The door shut, the engine started, and the sound of his car faded down the street. Mom collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood frozen, my whole world spinning out of control. For years, I thought my family was unshakable. Messy, sure. Flawed, definitely. But strong enough to survive anything. Now it felt like I was standing in the ashes of something that had burned too long in silence. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, one thought kept echoing in my mind. If Dad was gone for good, that left me with Michael. And I wasn't sure which loss hurt worse. The days after Dad left felt like living in a house with no walls. Everything was exposed, raw, fragile, ready to collapse at the slightest touch. Mom hardly spoke to me. When she did, it was always the same hollow line, "We'll be okay." But nothing about us was okay. The silence between us was thicker than any argument could have been. I tried calling Dad. Sometimes he answered, sometimes he didn't. When he did, his voice was short, guarded, like he was afraid of saying too much. "I'm fine," he'd say. "Don't worry about me." But I was worried. I was terrified. Because the man who had raised me, who had been my anchor, was drifting farther away each day. Meanwhile, Michael kept finding me. He showed up at school again, leaning against his truck like he belonged there. He showed up at the diner where I worked weekends, leaving huge tips I couldn't refuse fast enough. One night, he even knocked on the back door of our house while Mom was asleep. "Jake," he whispered through the screen, "please, just talk to me." I wanted to slam the door in his face, but some part of me, some broken, angry part, needed answers. So I stepped outside. "You don't get it," I hissed. "Every time you show up, it makes things worse. Dad's gone, Mom's falling apart, and you—" My throat tightened. "You ruined everything." His face twisted with pain. "I never meant to hurt you, or him, but I can't change the past. All I can do is be here now." "Be here?" I snapped. "You've been here my whole life, pretending to be my uncle, sitting at the table with us, smiling like nothing was wrong. You knew, and you let Dad love me like his own while you sat there in silence." His eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "I stayed silent because I thought it was best for you, because I didn't want to take that love away from you." I shook my head, fury boiling up again. "Don't twist this into some noble sacrifice. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourself." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I was a coward. But I'm not walking away now. Whether you like it or not, I'm your father. And one day you'll understand that." I stared at him, my chest heaving, every nerve screaming to deny it. But then I caught my reflection in his eyes. The same jawline, the same dark hair, the same stubborn fire when we were angry. And I hated that I couldn't deny it anymore. I slammed the door in his face without another word. Inside, Mom was standing in the hallway, watching. She didn't say anything, but the look in her eyes told me she'd heard everything. That night, I dreamed of Dad, of him teaching me how to ride my bike, of him holding my hand at the fair, of him clapping the loudest at my school play. And when I woke up, tears were soaking my pillow. I wanted him back. I wanted us back. But some things can't be undone. Weeks passed. Dad didn't return, Michael didn't stop, and Mom drifted through the house like a ghost. Then one afternoon, I came home from school to find an envelope on my bed, my name scrawled across the front. Inside was a letter. Jake, I know you hate me right now. I don't blame you. But I need you to know that everything I've done, as wrong as it was, came from love. Not just for your mother, but for you. I've watched you grow up, and I've been proud every step of the way, even if I couldn't say it out loud. You don't have to forgive me, but please, don't shut me out forever. M. I crumpled the letter in my fist. I wanted to burn it. I wanted to erase his words from existence, but some twisted part of me couldn't throw it away. That night, I sat on the porch with the letter beside me, the cool air biting at my skin. For the first time, I said the question out loud, to no one. Who am I? The words vanished into the night. No answer came back. And that's when I realized the truth wasn't just about what my parents had done. It was about me, about the blood in my veins, about the fracture that would never heal. I wasn't just my father's son. I wasn't just my uncle's mistake. I was something broken, born from betrayal. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't see a way to put the pieces back together. Winter came early that year, and with it a kind of silence that felt permanent. Dad stayed gone. Mom hardly left her room. And me. I drifted between school, work, and the empty house, carrying secrets too heavy for someone my age. But silence doesn't last. Secrets rot in the dark, and sooner or later, they demand to be seen. It happened at Christmas. Grandma insisted on hosting like she always did. She wanted normal, wanted her family together under one roof like every year before. I didn't want to go, but Mom begged, said Grandma didn't deserve to pay for her mistakes. So we went. The living room smelled like pine and cinnamon. The tree glowing with old ornaments, the same decorations I'd grown up staring at since I was little. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Until Michael walked in. He looked thinner, older, like the months away had carved him hollow. He didn't even glance at Mom. His eyes went straight to me, and I swear in that second, I felt both love and distance radiating from him like heat. Then Michael arrived. The room went still. Every conversation died mid-sentence. My father's jaw clenched, my mother's hands shook, and my stomach twisted so hard I thought I might be sick. Grandma, bless her, tried to smooth it over. She said, "We're still family, it's Christmas." But it wasn't Christmas. Not anymore. It was a war zone wrapped in tinsel and blinking lights. Dinner was unbearable. Dad sat at one end of the table, Michael at the other. Mom sat in between like a shield, her fork barely touching her food. Conversation stumbled forward in fragments. Weather, work, school, but no one was listening. Then Grandma, in her well-meaning way, asked me the question that shattered the illusion. She said, "So, Jake, have you and your father talked?" The word father hung heavy in the air, and I knew she didn't mean Dad. She meant Michael. Every eye turned to me. Dad's, Mom's, Michael's. I dropped my fork, my appetite gone. "He's not my father," I said flatly. Michael flinched like I'd struck him. "Jake, don't," I snapped. "Don't talk to me like you have any right." "Son, I'm not your son," I shouted, my voice cracking in the middle. The room rang with it, sharp and ugly. Grandma gasped. Mom covered her mouth. Dad sat frozen, his face unreadable. Michael's eyes glistened, but his jaw tightened. "Whether you want to accept it or not, I am your father, by blood." "Blood doesn't mean anything," I shot back. I turned to Dad, desperate. Tell him he's nothing to me." Dad's eyes locked on mine. His lips parted, then closed. He looked torn in half. Finally, he whispered, "You're my son. Always." For the first time in weeks, warmth spread through my chest. But it was fleeting. Because Michael stood then, his voice sharp. "You can't erase me, Daniel. He's mine, too. And one day, he'll see that." The table erupted. Mom shouted for them to stop. Grandma sobbed into her napkin. I shoved my chair back so hard it scraped the floor. "Enough," I roared. My voice cracked like thunder, silencing the room. "Do you hear yourselves? You've turned me into a prize to fight over. I'm not your mistake. I'm not your property. I'm not some war trophy between brothers." My chest heaved, tears burning my eyes. I looked at Michael, then at Dad. I whispered, "You both ruined me, and I don't know if I'll ever forgive either of you." The silence that followed was worse than the shouting. I grabbed my coat and stormed out into the freezing night. My breath puffed in clouds as I walked down the icy street, my hands shaking. Behind me, I heard footsteps crunching in the snow. "Jake, wait." It was Dad. I spun around, my voice raw. "Why? So you can tell me again that you love me but can't look at me? Or so he can keep calling me his son when all he ever did was destroy our family?" Dad's eyes glistened in the glow of the street lamp. His lips parted, then closed. He beckoned, telling me that he loved me, but he couldn't look at me. Or so he could keep calling me his son when all he ever did was destroy our family. Dad's eyes glistened in the glow of the street lamp. His lips parted, then closed. But he couldn't look at me. But he couldn't look at me. But he couldn't look at me. Because you're not a mistake. You're mine no matter what the blood says. And I'm terrified of losing you. The words broke me. I dropped my gaze, tears spilling hot on my cheeks despite the cold. "I don't know who I am anymore," I whispered. Dad stepped closer, his voice trembling. "You're Jake. You're my son. That's all that matters." For the first time in months, I let him hug me. His arms wrapped tight, strong, desperate. And even though part of me still doubted, still burned with anger and confusion, I clung to him like a lifeline. Because in that moment, I realized something. The truth may have shattered us, but love, the messy, flawed kind, was the only thing keeping us from falling completely apart. After Christmas, nothing was the same. Dad went back to staying with a friend across town, but at least he answered my calls more often. Mom tried to piece together what little remained of our family, but her efforts felt hollow. And Michael, he didn't stop. He started sending me texts, short, desperate messages. "Can we talk? I'm not the villain here. You'll understand one day." I never answered, but I couldn't bring myself to block his number either. It was like part of me needed the reminder, the constant buzzing reminder that I was living inside a lie. School wasn't an escape either. Word had spread after the fight in our yard, after Christmas. Kids whispered, speculated, pieced together fragments until my entire life was gossip. "Did you hear his uncle's actually his dad?" I stopped sitting in the cafeteria, stopped going to parties, stopped talking to people who weren't already part of the mess. One night, I sat in my room scrolling through the old photo albums Mom kept. Pictures of me on Dad's shoulders at the zoo, Dad teaching me how to fish at the lake, Dad cheering at my baseball games. Page after page of proof. Proof that he was there, that he stayed, that no matter what the blood said, he was the one who raised me. But the photos made me ache, because I also noticed Michael on the edges of the frames, sitting at the picnic table, grinning in the background, always there, like a shadow. It made me sick. A few nights later, Dad called. His voice was weary, softer than I'd ever heard. "Jake, I've been thinking about us, about everything." My stomach twisted. "What about it?" "I don't want to keep running. You're my son, and I don't want to lose you to him. But if we're going to survive this, we need to do it together, you and me." I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. "What about Mom?" Silence. Then, "I don't know if I can ever forgive her, but I can't walk away from you. That's all I know." I swallowed hard. "So what do? We tell the truth. We stop letting him control the narrative. We tell people who we are, and we move forward, together." The idea terrified me, but also, it was the first plan that felt like something other than drowning. When I hung up, I found Mom sitting in the kitchen, sipping tea with her hands shaking. I told her what Dad said. Her eyes filled with tears. "He's right. We can't keep hiding. Secrets destroy families." I almost laughed. "You think?" She winced, but didn't argue. The next weekend, we sat in Grandma's living room. Me, Mom, Dad, and Michael. The air was heavy enough to choke on. Grandma sat in her chair, hands folded tight, eyes wide like she was watching a car accident she couldn't look away from. Dad spoke first. "We can't keep living like this. Jake deserves the truth, and so does everyone else. No more secrets." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "And then what? You think airing our shame makes this better?" Dad's eyes blazed. "The shame isn't mine." Mom's voice cracked. It's mine. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. The silence pressed down until I thought I might scream. Finally, I did. This isn't about who screwed who over or whose fault it is. It's about me. My whole life, I thought I knew who I was, and you took that from me. You don't get to keep fighting over me like I'm a trophy. I'm not a prize. I'm not a mistake. I'm me, and I'll decide who my family is. The words tumbled out in a rush, my chest burning, my hands trembling. Michael leaned forward, his voice desperate. And what if I decide you're part of that family? I looked him dead in the eyes. Then maybe one day I'll call you more than my uncle. But not now. Not after everything you did. Right now, you're just the man who broke my family. His face twisted with pain, but he didn't argue. Dad's hand landed on my shoulder, firm and steady. You don't have to decide tonight. You don't have to decide ever. Just know this. You're mine, and no one can take that away. For the first time, I saw Michael's eyes drop, saw his shoulders slump, like he'd lost a battle he'd been fighting his whole life. The room was quiet after that. Too quiet. I stood, my heart pounding. I need air. Outside, the night was cold and still. I leaned against the porch railing, staring at the stars. For a brief moment, I felt something I hadn't in months. Not peace exactly, but clarity. The truth had destroyed us, but maybe, just maybe, it could also rebuild us, if we had the courage to let it. The weeks after that meeting were strange, like we detonated a bomb and were still standing in the smoke, waiting to see what pieces would fall back into place. Dad started coming around more, not staying in the house, not yet, but picking me up for dinners, for drives, for long talks where the silence between us wasn't so suffocating anymore. Mom tried to make peace, but Dad couldn't even look at her without his jaw tightening. And Michael disappeared. At first, the absence felt like a relief. No more texts, no more surprise appearances, no more desperate letters shoved under my door. But then, weeks turned into a month, and I started to wonder if maybe his silence was more dangerous than his presence. It was late one night when the knock came. Soft, careful. I was the only one awake. When I opened the door, Michael was standing there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. His clothes hung loose on his frame, his face hollow. "Jake," he said quietly, "can we talk?" Every instinct screamed to shut the door, but something in his eyes, something broken, made me step aside. We sat in the living room, the only light coming from the lamp by the couch. He clasped his hands together, staring down at them like they held the answers. "I'm leaving," he said finally. I blinked. "Leaving?" He nodded. "Town, family, everything. I got a job offer in another state. It's time." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. My chest twisted, conflicted. Part of me wanted to cheer, to
Free to
finally
use
breathe
gameplay
again
for
without
your
his shadow
TikTok
looming.
channel.
But another part, the part that hated him the most, ached at the thought of him just vanishing. I asked, "What about Grandma?" His voice cracked. "She'll be okay. She always knew more than she let on." I leaned back, studying him. "Why are you telling me this?" He finally met my eyes. His voice was raw. "Because you deserve to hear it from me. Because I don't want you to think I'm running away from you. I'm doing this for you. So you can heal. So your dad can heal. So maybe one day you won't have to look at me and feel all this hate." My throat tightened. "You think leaving fixes anything?" "No," he whispered. "Nothing will fix what I did. But maybe distance will stop it from getting worse." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked, the house groaned in the winter wind. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning in me for months. "Do you ever regret it?" His face crumpled. "Every day. Not you, never you, but the way it happened. The lies, the betrayal. I regret that more than anything." I wanted to hate him in that moment, but all I felt was exhaustion. "Then, go," I said quietly. "Do what you have to do." He stood slowly, like the weight of years was pulling on him. At the door, he hesitated. "Jake, I'll always be proud of you, even if I don't deserve to say it." Then he was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. When Dad came the next day, I told him. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time in months, I saw something soften in his eyes. Not forgiveness, but maybe the start of it. He's always run from his mistakes. But maybe this time, it's for the best. We stood there in the kitchen, the weight of everything between us heavy, but shifting, changing. Finally, Dad looked at me and said, "We'll get through this. Just you and me." And for the first time since I found that box in the attic, I almost believed him. But this story didn't end with Michael's departure. Because secrets like ours don't disappear when someone leaves town. They linger, they echo, they shape everything that comes after. Weeks later, I walked into Grandma's living room to find her sitting with a photo album open on her lap. She looked up at me, her eyes glistening. "You look just like him," she whispered. I froze. She didn't say which him she meant, and maybe she didn't need to. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. No matter how much I tried to deny it, no matter how hard I clung to Dad, Michael would always live in my face, in my blood, in the shadows of who I was. And that was a truth I couldn't escape. The weeks after Michael left felt strangely quiet. Too quiet, like the house had finally stopped echoing with secrets. But the silence wasn't peace, it was aftermath. Dad began coming home more often. Not every night, not like before, but enough that I started to feel him return in pieces. He'd sit with me at the table, sometimes in silence, sometimes with half-hearted attempts at conversation. It wasn't easy, but it was something. Mom tried harder too, cooking meals, leaving notes on the fridge, asking about school, but her eyes stayed hollow. Every kindness felt like an apology she didn't have the courage to say out loud. I carried the weight of both of them. I carried Michael too, even in his absence. Because his shadow didn't leave with him, it stayed in the way people looked at me, in the resemblance I saw every time I looked in the mirror. One night, Dad and I sat outside on the porch. The spring air was cool, carrying the smell of cut grass. He handed me a soda, cracked one open for himself. "I keep thinking about it," he said quietly. "About how I almost walked away for good." I stared at the street, the lamplight glowing across the pavement. "Why didn't you?" He hesitated. Then, "Because you're mine. Not by blood, maybe, but in every way that matters." The words cut through me, sharp and steady. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "For what?" "For being me. For being a reminder." He turned then, his eyes fierce. "Don't you ever apologize for existing. None of this is your fault. Not 1 second of it." I blinked hard against the sting in my eyes. He put a hand on my shoulder, steady and firm. "I promised the day you were born that I'd protect you. That promise didn't end because of what your mother did, or what Michael did. It's still true. Always." For the first time in months, I believed him. Still, healing wasn't simple. At school, rumors never really died. Friends asked questions I didn't answer. Some people treated me like a scandal, others like a tragedy. I stopped trying to explain. At home, Mom kept trying, but Dad's distance from her was like a wall. Sometimes I caught her staring at him, guilt etched in every line of her face. But he never looked back. It was clear. Some things couldn't be repaired. Not fully. Months later, a letter arrived. From Michael. It was postmarked 2 states away. My hands shook as I opened it. "Jake, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. I just want you to know that leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was necessary. For you, for your father, for everyone. You'll always have my blood, but I know that doesn't make me your dad. He is. He always was. And I hope one day you'll understand why I had to disappear. Take care of yourself. That's all I ever wanted. Michael." I read it twice, then set it on fire in the sink. Watched the words curl and turn to ash. That night, I told Dad. He nodded slowly, his jaw tight. "Good, let him stay gone." And yet, a part of me felt hollow, like burning the letter didn't erase the truth it carried. Because Michael wasn't gone, not really. He was in my face, in my blood, in the fracture of my family. But as time passed, I started to understand something. Yes, my family lied. Yes, the truth destroyed us. But it also forced me to see what mattered. Dad, he chose me. He stayed, even when everything in him must have screamed to leave. Mom, she failed me, but she was still my mother, still trying in her own broken way. And me, I wasn't defined by the mistakes of the people who created me. I was defined by who I decided to become. One evening, months later, I found myself back in the attic. The box was still there, tucked behind the suitcases and Christmas lights. I opened it, looked at the letters, the photographs, the lies. Then I closed it again. I didn't need them anymore. When I went back downstairs, Dad was waiting in the kitchen. He looked up from his coffee and smiled. Small, tired, but real. And in that moment, I realized something important. The truth hadn't set us free. Not really. But it had given us something else. The chance to start over. I don't know if we'll ever be whole again. Maybe not. Maybe the scars are permanent. But I know this. I'm not a mistake. I'm not a secret. I'm me. And that has to be enough. That was the day I stopped searching for answers in the past and started building a future that was mine alone.